Hi, so in this video we're going to be looking at liquidity constrained consumers. Now these are simply consumers who are unable to borrow. So we'll say no borrowing. Now this type of consumer we can think of them as being fairly common in real life. For example, in a financial crisis where say banks are not very liquid and they're not looking to lend out to many people because their balance sheets are very tight. So people are unable to get finance through borrowing, or we could think of people who have very bad credit records and so they are unable to borrow from banks, and maybe their only option is say a payday loan site or something, and they don't see that as a viable option. But we're basically just thinking about people that can't borrow, and this is something we may have to consider in real life. So let's have a look at how this factors into our intertemporal optimal choices. So for starters, we're going to look at this diagram here, and we can first notice that this is a saver. Why is this a saver? Because we have income Y1, so income in period 1, and we are consuming less than our income in period 1, which means that the difference between those we are saving for period 2, and so hence why our consumption in period 2 is higher than our income in period 2. So we have a saver. Now let's consider what happens when this person is no longer allowed to borrow. So this diagram we have at the moment is just what we've had in previous videos, where we can borrow and save at interest rates R. But now we're saying that this consumer is liquidity constrained, so they're not allowed to borrow. So the way we factor this into our diagram is we consider their income point, which is given by Y1 and Y2, their income in each period, and we say that they are no longer allowed to borrow, which means that in period 1 they cannot consume more than their income. Or they're still allowed to save, but they're not allowed to borrow in period 1. So the most they can consume in period 1 is this Y1 figure. So our budget constraint now becomes this red line, but they are allowed to save, so to the left-hand side of this, that is perfectly fine. They're allowed to increase period 2 consumption by saving, but they're not allowed to consume in this area because they can't borrow, they can't get the money to finance consumption in period 1 that's higher than their income. But what we'll notice is that our maximization, where our indifference curve is tangent to the budget constraint, is still left completely unchanged, because the part of the budget constraint that we were previously tangent to with our indifference curve, we'll just call I, the condition is still exactly the same, and the only way the budget constraint changes is we lose this little bit of area. So we're not going to have a tangency point there, because all these consumption possibilities were available when we were allowed to borrow, but we chose not to because we're a saver. So we note that for saver, this constraint is non-binding. We have the constraint that we're not allowed to borrow, but we don't care because we're a saver, so the constraint does not bind. So for savers, the fact that we can't borrow doesn't matter at all. But now we can look at what happens to people who were initially borrowing when this constraint was imposed on them. Okay, so now I've drawn up a diagram where we have a borrower and they currently have no constraints on their borrowing. How do we know they're a borrower? Well, at their optimum point, they are choosing to consume C1, whereas their income is only Y1. So they have to make up this gap by borrowing against their income in period 2, and so their consumption in period 2 is less than their income in period 2, so this is a borrower. But as you can see, we currently don't have any constraints on how much they can borrow, so let's impose that they're not allowed to borrow. How do we do that? We look at where their income is at the moment. Y1 is their income in period 1, and Y2 is their income in period 2. But they're not allowed to borrow, so the most that they are allowed to consume in period 1 is their income in period 1. They can't borrow against any of their future income, so their budget constraint is now restricted at this red line, and they're still allowed to save as before, so the budget constraint to the left of this line stays the same. But as you can see, their existing indifference curve, which I will call I1, this indifference curve is outside of the budget constraint now. It is no longer tangent to this red budget constraint, and this red budget constraint is when we have no borrowing. So I1 is no longer obtainable, and so we have to maximize with respect to the new red budget constraint, and the tangency condition we will find, that's not a very good line, where we're tangent, we'll find that it's at this kink in the budget constraint. And we have our new indifference curve I2, we've shifted in, so we're less happy, but our tangency point is always going to be at this kink because we are a borrower, or we were initially a borrower. So now that we put a restriction that you're not allowed to borrow, where is this consumer going to consume? Well, they're still the thing we've restricted, the constraint that binds, is the consumption in period 1. So they're going to shift back consumption in period 1 to income in period 1, Y1, which is at this kink. They could consume at, say, any Y2 below this kink, anywhere on this red line here. But why would they do that? They want to increase their Y2 as much as they can, given this restriction, so they consume at the kink. So this is not great. A borrower is not very happy if they're liquidity constrained, because they have to move to a lower indifference curve, as we've shown there. Just as a little extension, let's consider what happens if we increase the interest rate. Well, as our red budget constraint is just vertical at Y1, this doesn't change at all when we increase the interest rate because we're not allowed to borrow. So there is no interest rate here, it's just not going to happen. If we increase the interest rate, we're going to increase the slope for savings, so we incentivize savings, and at this kink we're just going to get a bit steeper. But as we can see, due to this borrower's constraints, this doesn't change anything. Their optimum at this new dashed budget constraint is still at the same point. Increasing the interest rate doesn't do anything to a borrower. They're still equally unhappy as they were before. Now we can extend this idea a little bit further to derive the Keynesian consumption function. How do we do this? Well, let's suppose that some fraction of the economy are liquidity constrained consumers, LCC, and we'll call this fraction beta. Whoops, if my pen would work, there we go, beta. And the rest of the population just consumes, as we saw in the permanent income hypothesis, as we saw in a previous video. So the remainder of the economy is going to be given by 1 minus beta, as beta is just some fraction of the economy. And this is exhausted. Everyone in the economy is either liquidity constrained or they just consume as normal. So let's construct our aggregate consumption function, which we'll call consumption aggregate. Well, it's going to be made up by the consumption of liquidity constrained consumers and of permanent income hypothesis consumers. And in the aggregate, this is going to be a weighted average of these two consumers, and it's weighted by the fraction of the population that is these two types of consumers. So beta, a fraction beta of these is liquidity constrained, and the remainder, 1 minus beta, is permanent income hypothesis consumers. So we just add that together to get our aggregate consumption function. We can rewrite this as the liquidity constrained consumers are just going to be consuming their income, as we saw that the borrowers were just consuming on the kink of their budget curve, which was at their income level, Y1 and Y2. If they aren't constrained consumers, then they'll consume their permanent income hypothesis consumption, for example, the savers, and what we're saying is that some people are constrained and some aren't, so the remainder of the population is still just consuming at their optimized point, their permanent income hypothesis point, where they're just completely unconstrained, they consume wherever they want. and we can rewrite this term on the right as just some term alpha, and keep this term as beta y, and so our aggregate consumption function is given by beta y plus alpha. And this is the form of the Keynesian consumption function. It's a linear relationship in output is given by our consumption. We consume some fraction of output plus a constant. However, in this case, clearly alpha is not a constant because it depends on the interest rate. This is our permanent income hypothesis consumers. This is meant to be an arrow, but the pen is not working very well. So this alpha term depends negatively on the interest rate, but we write it like this so that we can represent it in a way that the Keynesian consumption function is often represented. And some papers can estimate what this alpha is, and we could treat it as a constant, but in reality, from the working we've gone through, we can see that this does depend negatively on the interest rate, so it's going to be endogenous in our model. So that just about wraps up this video. Make sure to check out the playlist for the future and past videos. Make sure to subscribe so that you can get my future videos straight into your feed. And please do like this video if it was at all useful.